Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's event. My name is Ben Walters, the BirdCam's project leader here at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and I'll be your host today as we celebrate the 2026 Hellgate Osprey Cam season. We're going to get started in just a moment, but while we're waiting for people to trickle in, I wanted to ask that if you enjoy our live streaming bird cams, the highlight videos that we produce, and the events offered on our channel, please do like and subscribe and share our channel with your friends and family because it helps us out a lot. Also, if you haven't already, please register for this event if you want to receive a link to the recording afterwards, and also to receive a chance at free enrollment for our Understanding Bird Behavior course from the Cornell Labs Bird Academy. We'll be sure to post registration links throughout the chat during this event, so look out for those. Charles Eldermeyer from the Cornell Lab is also going to be hanging out in the chat with you guys today to help answer questions and post information along the way. If you haven't had a chance, please let us know where you're chiming in from today by testing out your fingers in the chat. We are going to touch on a broad range of Osprey topics today, so be sure to ask any questions that you have. We're going to try to answer as many as we can throughout the event. Before we introduce our panelists today, I just wanted to give a couple of shout outs. Number one, to everyone here joining us in the audience, everyone who's watched the Hellgate Osprey Cam along the way today, and made it such an awesome site to follow over the years. And also a big shout out to our amazing volunteers. You know who you are. They are so devoted to sharing highlights and information about the Ospreys activities daily with the community. And they've really built such a strong and amazing community surrounding the Hellgate Osprey Camp. So thank you to them. Of course, we wouldn't be here today without our partners at the University of Montana. They've helped make this camera a reality for more than a dozen years now, plus. So why don't we start welcoming some of them in today? All of our panelists here, go ahead and turn on your cameras. We'll get everybody introduced here. Welcome, welcome. Great to see their shining faces. We'll start with Dr. Erick Greene, Professor Emeritus at the University of Montana and co-founder of the Montana Osprey Project. Eric, I'm sure many people may be familiar with you if they've followed the cam for any amount of time, but go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. This is really super. Uh, yeah, I'm recently retired from University of Montana. I was a prof there for over 30 years in wildlife biology and biology, and I've studied ospreys since I was an undergrad in Nova Scotia, Canada.
Very cool. Welcome, Eric. Next up, we have the Megan Fylling, the co-research director of UMBEL, which is the University of Montana Bird Ecology Lab. Great to have you here with us, Megan. Go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody.
Thank you, Ben. Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to chat with you today about ospreys. I've been a part of this project since the camera was put up in 2010. Before that, I entered the world of ornithology as an undergraduate at the University of Montana Biological Station at Flathead Lake and never looked back after that. I'm an avian ecology ecologist, and most of my work revolves around population monitoring, forest and fire ecology, avian ecotoxicology, and migration.
Very cool, very well-rounded, Megan. Now, last but not least, we have Sasha Robinson, who's an avian ecologist at UMBEL. Sasha, the floor is yours.
Hey, thanks, Ben. Yeah, I'm Sasha Robinson. I've worked on a few different projects for UMBEL, but in my current role, I run the Bird's Eye View education program, have done for the past 2 years, our BVET program. With this program, we mainly operate three different bird banding stations in the Clark Fork watershed. They're open to the public, and it offers a chance for people to get outside and get up close and personal with birds, learn about birds, and how we use banding and ringing to study population trends and the health of riparian ecosystems. We also do a lot of education about the Superfund site and about the effects of Butte mining history, Butte, Montana's mining history on the watershed and its birds, and what's being done to restore and remediate. So most of my experiences with songbirds and near songbirds, birds under 100 grams, but so I'm pretty new to the osprey world. This is my first season tuning in and trying to lend a hand and provide on-the-ground support when necessary. But I'm excited to be part of this community, and I'm pretty blown away by the engagement and how dedicated we all are to watching this play out. And I'm really thankful to the camera operators, especially for what an amazing job they've been doing. So, and I'm excited that it's been a great year to watch Iris.
Yeah, it definitely has been. And I just wanted to thank all of you one more time for joining us here today, sharing your expertise. I know you all have busy schedules, but we're excited to spend the next, 55 minutes learning all about ospreys with your help. So before we sort of dig into the nitty-gritty, I wanted to set the stage a little bit about what we're going to be covering today. To start, we're going to go into a little bit of osprey natural history, explore some of those incredible adaptations that make them such a cool and fascinating species. Then we're going to focus more singularly on the Hellgate Cam, look at some of those memorable moments that we've all shared throughout the season this year, and then also highlight some of the remarkable behaviors that ospreys share sort of more broadly through the lens of the camera. And finally, we're going to take a brief look at some of the research. We've got some great researchers here today. So we're going to talk about the research happening in Western Montana and the important role that ospreys have played in helping understand the ecosystems there. If time allows at the end, we've got a lot to cover today, but we'll try to wrap up with a few live Q&A questions. We've already had over 100, maybe even 200 questions submitted during the registration process for this webinar. So we've woven those into the discussion already, and we've peppered them in where they fit. So if you have questions that you put in during the registration process, we're going to try to answer those broadly across the way. But of course, if you have any questions pop up during the event, pop them in the chat. Charles will be there to answer some of them. We'll try to address some of them live. We're probably not going to get to everybody's questions, so I'm sorry for that, but we're going to do our best to answer as many as we can. So let's kick things off. I think a great way to start things is to go live and check out the Hellgate Cam and see what's happening right now. It looks like we've got Iris, I think, there, and her chick Wensi at the nest. We've all been sort of waiting, watching this morning. It looks like Wensi might fledge this morning, but thankfully the chick is stuck around here during the event so we can see them live together still. So I wanted to preface the conversation today with just a little history lesson about the camera and how it relates to the larger effort with the Montana Osprey Project. So Erick, I think you're probably the best one to tell us about the Ospreys. Can you tell us when the camera started streaming and sort of how it fits within the scope of the Montana Osprey Project?
Sure, Ben. Yeah, this poll that Iris is on now, that was put up in 2007, and Iris has been on it. It was put up in the winter, so she's been on this poll since 2008. She's been breeding there. But in 2011, Dr. Heiko Langner, one of the collaborators on this larger Osprey project, we put up the first camera. So it was many versions ago, and compared to the high-res camera that's there now, it was a little bit primitive, but it worked. So there's been a live streaming camera for 15 years at this nest. And the way this nest fits into the larger Osprey project, it's really just kind of the tip of the iceberg. Iris is the face of many things we do. And by we, I need to give a shout out to Rob Domenech. He's the director of a really great group called Raptor View Research Institute. And he really was the brains behind getting this Osprey research project started in the first place. So we've been working together for over 20 years now, and we'll talk a little bit more later, but this part of the Clark Fork River is on the largest EPA Superfund site in the United States, and Sasha touched on that. So there's been a lot of problems with heavy metal contamination, and there's a massive restoration that's been going on. And so we've been using ospreys since they're essentially aquatic organisms, right? They're eating entirely fish. So by studying their blood and their feathers, we can figure out how much contaminants they're picking up from the river. And so over the last 20 years, we've been able to follow the cleanup and let the ospreys tell us how good a job the cleanup is really doing. So we'll touch on that a little bit more. We also do a lot of public education. So over the years, we've taken out over 50,000 people to the river and talk about aquatic systems and rivers and river health and so forth. And we do a lot of conservation as well with ospreys and other raptors. So sort of a three-legged stool of research, education, and conservation. And Iris and the camera is one way that we all can get this really intimate view of the lives of these very special wild creatures.
Yeah, that's great. And thanks for sharing that, Eric. You mentioned the education aspect and just how broad of a reach Iris and the camera have been over the years. It's been a gateway for literally millions of people to connect and learn about ospreys. And that's kind of special because they are a pretty ubiquitous species. They are present in many, many places around the globe, and they're unique in that they're a raptor that only eats fish. So, Eric, if you don't mind walking us through a few of the adaptations that make ospreys really cool and different than a lot of other birds. So I think you have a few slides prepared
Right,
to share.
right, great. Yeah, I've got some interesting images that show some of the fascinating adaptations that ospreys have that make them this superb fishing bird. But before I do that, I'd like to say that many of us on this team, we have a saying, just add water and you have ospreys. And ospreys are a really, really interesting species. There's only one species in the entire family, Pandionidae, and that's very unusual. In most bird families or other families, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of species in that family. But ospreys are so specialized and so unique, there's only one species in the entire family. That one species is found on every continent except Antarctic. So they're in very widespread. And if there's good water around with good numbers of fish, there's a good likelihood that there will be ospreys either breeding there or certainly passing through on migration. So very, very widespread species. Their diet is made up almost entirely of fish. Let me share some of these pictures with you right now. All right, so here's just a few things. I'll run through them pretty quickly, but ospreys have really kind of cool feet that are well suited to catching fish. So here's a bunch of pictures of feet of different raptors. And you can notice that most of these species have three toes in the front and one facing backwards. But the osprey, they can have that configuration, especially when they're perched, but they can switch an outer toe and flip it around backwards. So they have this 2-2 configuration of toes. And so here's a picture on the left, an osprey perched. You can see that it's got three in the front and one in the back, but that when they're diving down to catch a fish, they flip that outer toe to the back. So they go in, they catch the fish two forward, two talons forward, two on backwards. So you can see this osprey has got this fish snagged, two in the front, two in the back. And this just adds more stability. And it's the only raptor that can do this. And it seems to be special adaptation for dealing with these big, heavy, slippery, flopping fish. So this is kind of neat. Here's a osprey diving, and you can see that just before they hit the water, they flip around. So you've got this 2-2 configuration of toes. And so you can see that's a really great set of talons coming down on a fish. The other thing about ospreys is they can dive from tremendous heights and they can hit the water, sometimes going, 100 miles an hour. So really, really fast. Usually not that fast, but if you think about it, if they went into the water with their wings out, the impact of that would rip their wings off, literally. And so they've got a special adaptation. They can actually dislocate their shoulder joints. And just like an Olympic diver going in, trying not to make a splash, they throw their wings straight back. So here in this spectacular sequence of shots, you can see just before the osprey hits the water, it's throwing its wings back. Another amazing adaptation of ospreys is that I want to point out the breastbone. You can see it, this great big keel on the breastbone. So if you feel your own chest, we don't have a protuberance there. This is for the attachment of the pectoralis muscles. So this is our chest muscles. We have pectoralis muscles, but these are the main muscles that power flight. This is what the ospreys need to flap downwards. And if you think about it, an osprey sitting on the water with say, a 3 or 4 pound fish, which may weigh more than they do, and they're covered with water, they need to generate an incredible amount of downward force. So they have this huge pectoral muscle, and it weighs about that one muscle, the pectoralis in ospreys, weighs about a quarter or a third of their entire body mass. So if you think about if we were made up, a third of our body mass was made up of our pectorals, we'd kind of look like Arnold Schwarzenegger or something. But so that's a really neat adaptation for this flying, getting off water with heavy loads. There you can see in the skeleton, you can see this massive sternum that allows this huge pectoral muscle to attach. So this is a really unique and very interesting adaptation. Another really cool thing about ospreys is, they're going into the water at high speeds, and just like this swimmer who's got goggles and nose plugs to keep water from going up, ospreys have exactly the same thing. So here's an osprey. It's got this special, very thick, what's called a nictitating membrane that they can slide across their eyes. And they do that just before they hit the water. So you can see this osprey is just halfway through sliding this set of goggles across its eyes to protect its eyes as it goes in. And also they can close their nostrils just before they hit the water as well, so they don't get a snout full of water. So just like this swimmer who's protecting his eyes and his nose, the ospreys can do the same thing. So that's a set of really neat adaptations that the ospreys have, that just a few of them that allow them to be such highly specialized fishing raptors.
That is so cool. Thanks so much for sharing all those adaptations with us, Eric. I think of Osprey, like as a fisherman, I'm jealous of them because they have the built-in tackle box,
Exactly.
and there's nothing more exciting than seeing them live, like hovering over a potential dive. That's one of my favorite things I've ever seen. And just the anticipation for that is so cool. And if you get to see them catch a fish, that's even neater. So let's switch gears here a little bit and turn our attention to some of the highlights that we've seen this season at the Hellgate Osprey Nest. The first one we're going to show here is something we wait around for every spring. And this is the day that Iris returns from her annual migration. and everybody's sort of waiting on pins and needles. Iris is getting older, and every year we're saying, is she going to make it back? Is she going to make it back? And well, up until now, she has, and she's still breeding successfully, which is amazing. So, I wanted to get a sense, first off, anybody in the chat that's actually got to view Iris's return live this year, please let us know. I know I didn't get to see her actually land down, but I was watching her, get to work straight away on doing some spring cleaning at the nest. So Eric, we've had a lot of questions about Iris, and just she's been this long-standing matriarch at the site. Do we actually know, you've been observing her for a long time. How long have you been observing her, and do we know actually how old she is?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. We don't know exactly how old she is, but she's, as far as I can tell, one of the older known ospreys, if not the oldest known osprey in the world right now. She's probably at least 30 years old. And here's the calculus we do to figure that out. So this pole that she's on now, it was put up in winter of 2007. She's been on it since 2008 every year. And so that's 18 years. And oh, and let me just back up a little bit here. We don't have her banded. So how do we know it's Iris? A lot of ospreys Rob does band. So there's hundreds of banded ospreys in the area, but Iris and her chicks are not banded. So how do we know it's Iris? Many of you will know that it's because of her name. She has a really distinctive pattern of very heavy dots in her iris. So the first thing we do when an osprey lands on the nest is we zoom in on her eyeball and we do some biometrics, and we can tell from the speckling pattern in her eye that it's Iris. Also, I mean, we've know and love her, and her behaviors and personality is so distinctive as well. But so we know it's Iris from, and not another osprey, from her eyeball, her iris pattern. So she's been on this pole for 18 years. And then before that, I want to show you another interesting image. Uh, that that before the, let me just pull this up here. Sorry, just bringing things up here. So here's a photo I took. This is where it used to be called, we used to call it the owl pole. This is a set of high voltage power lines that's just downstream about 200 yards from Iris's nest. And this is where the feeding perch is right now. But Iris nested on these crossbars of this high voltage power line for at least 10 years before she nested in the current pole. This was very dangerous. It's amazing she didn't get electrocuted. And the reason her nest was taken down and the new pole was put up was the power company helped erect this pole. So thanks to Northwestern Energy for making that happen. And it was to move Iris off of this very dangerous site. So she was there for 10 years and then 18 years at the current site. That's 28 years. We know she's been alive. Ospreys don't start breeding until they're probably 3 years old. They return first when they're 2 years old, but it's very unusual for them to breed in their second year. So probably, and often it's like they don't start breeding till 3, 4, or 5. So at a very minimum, 28 plus 2, let's be conservative, that's 30 years. I suspect she might be older than that, but she's at least 30 years old. All right, so that's some of the calculus we do to say, she's about 30 years old.
Yeah, she's definitely a special lady.
Yeah, yeah.
So thinking back about when she returns from migration, Megan, I think you've done some data crunching to reduce the guessing game. I know there's always some pools going, some bets going about when the date Iris is going to return each year. So can you give us a window into what we should expect in terms of Iris returning maybe in 2027?
Yeah, so Iris, is fairly consistent with her arrival date every year. The years that we've recorded this information, she's arrived back to her nest anytime between April 1st and April 12th, with her favorite dates being April 5th, 6th, and 7th. And so those are the dates we kind of really look for her to return. This year she returned right in the middle of those dates on April 6th, so she made it, right in that same timing. And I'm not sure if this is an environmental cue that she's reading or if she's hustling to get back so that she arrives in time to protect her nest platform from competitors. But either way, she's really consistent. It's really neat to see that. So April 7th, she's returned back on that date at least 6 of the years that we've been recording that information. So that is her all-time favorite.
And speaking of migration, so Eric, you said she's not banded, she doesn't have a GPS tag or anything, so we don't know exactly where Iris goes when she migrates. But do we have any information about ospreys that live in Western Montana where they go when they migrate?
Yes, Rob Dominich and his colleagues have been doing outstanding work on osprey migration, and they put little satellite backpacks on the backs of chicks and adults. They're very small, solar paneled, that recharge the battery, and it talks to an Argos satellite. So about once an hour, they know within about 10 feet where every single bird is. So they've got amazing data on ospreys from this part of Western Montana. It's really interesting. Most of them from here, most head due south, a lot through Utah, Great Salt Lake area. They get down to about Arizona, and then they sort of fan out and go to Gulf of Mexico a lot, along the Texas coast, but also well down into Mexico. They also go on the Pacific coast down into Mexico. And many of them go down into Central America, into Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Honduras. So they can go, many thousands of miles south of here. We don't know where Iris or any of her previous mates have gone, but we suspect, probably in either on the Gulf of Mexico or the Pacific Ocean, anywhere from, say, northern Mexico down to Central America. Oh, yep. And Charles is pulling up a migration map showing the routes. And these are data from Rob Dominich and RaptorView Research Institute. So you can see these are trails of birds. Some wander around, like you can see one went over to northern Minnesota and then actually went down to Cuba and hung out there for a while and then jumped over to the Yucatan eventually, I think. But you can see this river of ospreys going down to Texas, Mexico, both coasts, and then down into Central America.
That's amazing. That's so cool to see those circuits that they run each year, and then return to the same exact spot to breed. That's pretty amazing. All right, so we're about halfway through our event today. I kind of want to keep things going so we can hit some of our other topics. So let's talk about the new man on campus here, Clark, who is Iris's new mate for 2026. We're gonna show him. This was early in the season, right? This is mid-April. After he returned later than Iris from migration. He's delivering her a fish. And so can you give us a sense of what we know about Clark?
Yeah, so Clark showed up last year and all last season and early this season, we called him New Guy 2 because we didn't know if he was going to stick around. New Guy 1, who was eventually renamed Finnegan, he didn't show up, so we suspect he died over the winter. And so New Guy 2 showed up last year and formed a pair bond with Iris. They did mate a little bit, but it was too late in the season. They didn't pull off any chicks last year. But the interesting thing watching them is they hung around a lot last summer, all summer long, and he would bring her fish and feed her all summer long. So they formed a very tight pair bond last year, even though they didn't breed. So they kind of took dating slowly, took them a year. And then he showed up on 18th of April this year. As Megan mentioned, Iris turned up on 6th of April. So he showed up 12 days later. We were getting a little worried that he might not show up, but he showed up. We suspect he's a younger male. We don't know. He's not banded. We know nothing about his previous history, where he's from. But I suspect this is his first time breeding, and that's just based on anecdotes. First of all, he didn't seem to know how to mate, which seems fairly basic if you're trying to reproduce as an osprey. So there was a learning curve there. Um, but uh, one of the things that we've been really delighted with is he has turned out to be an amazing provider, an amazing fishing bird. And that's one of the things that's sort of the biggest risks for ospreys trying to bring up chicks is the unpredictability of food. When it's super high water, flood
Mhm.
waters, it's just muddy water screaming by. It's almost impossible to see and catch fish. And then later in the summer, like now, when it's a series of 100-degree days and the river's getting really low, it's also hard to catch fish. But he's been bringing in consistently, usually several fish a day, and these lately, he's been bringing in these humongous, large-scale suckers, which are weighing like 3 or 4 pounds. They're monster fish that weigh more than he does. And so, one of the things that I've been impressed with watching Wensi grow up is this chick was really never hungry. It was
Mhm.
always cropped out and in a food coma. So, compared to a lot of previous years, Wensi has had a lot of great provisioning and has grown really well and is a very vigorous chick. So um, we've been delighted that Clark has turned into such a good fishing bird.
Yeah, and it's such a relief they returned back and now they're
Mhm.
successful for their first time together and hopefully it lasts. We're excited to have him. So let's move on to our next highlight here. And this was one of my personal favorites from the season. You can see there's a fledgling starling encroaching on the nest while Iris is incubating her eggs. You can just see they have no idea what to do with this little bird on top of the nest full. And Clark even comes in to investigate there. And the cool thing about this was this starling was actually thought to have fledged from a nest that was actually within the web of sticks that where the ospreys nest, right? Then their own nest was a smaller nest where the starlings raised their chicks. So over the years, we've seen several different bird species make their homes in the Hellgate nest. I think we've had eastern kingbirds, starlings, house sparrows. So is it common for large nests like this to become these mini ecosystems that support so much other wildlife?
Yeah, this is the penthouse condominium, isn't it? Yeah, so
Yeah.
there's in many osprey nests, there can be Uh, the most common birds are house sparrows and starlings that nest underneath, but in the sticks. So early on this season, some of the viewers may remember there was a very handsome male European starling singing all the time
Mhm.
from the nest. That was pretty cool. So yeah, this was pretty amazing. But there can be whole little ecosystems in these nests. Often there's colonies of wasps or hornets underneath there. And that can be, there doesn't seem to be one this year, but in years when there are, whenever a fish is brought in, there'll be like hundreds of wasps coming up
Yeah.
to be on the fish. But yeah, lots of insects inside the nest. And yeah, so it's a vibrant ecosystem for sure.
I saw a good comment come through the chat saying they're lucky it wasn't a red-tailed hawk. They're lucky the ospreys are only interested in fish.
Yeah. That was pretty funny. It reminded
Yeah.
me, this baby Starling reminded me of that kid's book, Are You My Mother?
Yeah. That's great. So while we're on the topic of the nest, we had a lot of people write in about potentially like, how do I get a nest platform installed in my area? Who builds these things? How do I encourage my community to get behind putting up an Osprey platform? And then like sort of along with that, combining another question is like, where should the placement be? Are they like super sensitive to human activity? Can you shed any light on that?
Yeah, sure. Well, let me take that last question first. As we know from Iris, the Hellgate Osprey camera, I mean, they're nesting right in a parking lot, right? Next to a highway, next to the interstate I-90 and a busy train station. So ospreys are probably the most tolerant raptor of humans. Yeah, a lot of raptors are very shy or get pretty upset when people are around their nest. These guys just ignore. So they're right on the river.
Mhm.
If there's a good feeding area nearby, ospreys, they pick spots that can be incredibly busy, like at the top of um, shopping plazas and light standards in very, very busy areas and so forth. Um, Most of the nests in around Missoula in western Montana, the ospreys are nesting on these platforms that are put up. I'd say about 90% of the nests right around in western Montana are on these human-built platforms. And the reason for that is because they love to nest on power lines, on the structures, the poles, and that's very dangerous. They can get electrocuted, they can start fires, they can blow out transformers, cause blackouts, and so forth. So the power companies, for quite a while, they've have been very good at building and installing these platforms near problem locations where there's ospreys nesting on power lines, and then moving the nest over during the winter and putting up excluders so that the ospreys can't get back on the power lines. So in many areas, that's the case where it's power companies that are erecting these platforms. Uh, They do nest certainly on natural snags. What they like to be near water, and they don't like anything over them. And they like to be kind of
Mhm.
the highest thing around. So if you're thinking about putting up a platform, if it's, oh, Wensi just fledged. Charles wrote, Wensi just fledged. Oh my goodness. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, well, this is this very special day, so we can all celebrate. Um, at yeah, what is it? 11:37 Mountain Time.
Local
Wow.
Yeah,
time.
that's incredible.
That's so cool.
I'm gonna cry.
Amazing.
What was I saying? Oh yeah. So they like if there's trees nearby that are higher, they probably won't nest on that platform. So they like to be the highest thing around with nothing over them. Uh, you can, as a private person, put up a platform. It can be pretty expensive. So, for example, the best poles are old telephone poles, and those are surprisingly expensive. Like a really long telephone pole can be two, $3,000 to get a really nice high one. The other really important bit of advice I would offer people, well, you need special digger machines and, to place them in, you got to get them dug way deep in the ground. So it's a process. You need to talk to people who have the right equipment. The other thing is the platform itself. If you just make it, say, of smooth plywood, that's going to get super slippery. They'll build a big nest. The first big windstorm, that nest is going to get blown over the side. We've seen it happen a lot. So what we do is in the bottom of all of our platforms, we've got big 10-inch, what are called lag bolts. So just great big 10-inch spikes coming all through the bottom of the nest, and the ospreys weave the sticks around in there. So that's why last month when there was that 100-mile-an-hour wind screaming through Hellgate Canyon, the nest was screaming around and there were sticks blowing off, but the whole nest stayed intact. That's because of those bolts. If you don't put up those, first big windstorm, you lose the nest and the ospreys.
Oh, perfect. That's a lot of great information for people that are interested to, get a platform going in their area. So exciting to hear that Wensi just fledged.
Wow.
That what timing, perfect timing, right on cue. But let's move on here to another like pivotal moment of the nesting season where we see the hatch of the chick, right? This is one of the most exciting moments every year. And Wensi just left the nest, but here it is entering the world. Iris actually just pulls the little shellnet off the top there. And this led to a lot of questions regarding, the eggs. Wensi was the only chick of the three eggs to hatch. Um, Can we talk a little bit about why maybe we think the other eggs failed to hatch? How common is this? What are the reasons that could have happened leading to the failure of hatch of the other eggs?
Yeah, I'll take a crack at this and then pass it over to Megan because she's done a lot of research on these sorts of issues. But we don't really know why the other two eggs hatched. I can think of at least three reasons. It might be Iris's age. She's a grand old dam of ospreys, at least 30 years old. We don't know how fertility in ospreys, if it declines with age. We have no information on that. The other might be that Clark's inexperience at mating. He was kind of a doofus. And so a lot of the times he was mating, I was watching as like, I don't think that worked. So it may have been a combination of Iris's age and him still just getting um, the hang of mating. It was obviously successful once. And the other has to do with high levels of environmental toxins in the eggs. So we know that there's high levels of mercury in stretches of this river. And we know that a lot of osprey eggs farther up the Clark Fork River fail to hatch. We've never had two eggs not hatch in Iris's nest, but I'll pass this over now to Megan, and because she's looking a lot at sort of the ecotoxicology in birds along the river.
Yeah, I mean, Eric, you did a great job answering that question. The answer is we don't know why those eggs didn't hatch. When it comes to contaminants, there's a lot of stuff. Mercury is kind of the main perpetrator in terms of the, toxic contaminants that are in the river, but there's a whole bunch of stuff in the river. So we know there are relatively high levels of arsenic, selenium, other mercury included, and zinc and copper and some other metals and metalloids in the water. And so one thing we definitely don't know anything about is the combination of all of those contaminants together and how that might affect egg viability or hatching potential. So I think the plan is if that egg doesn't get broken here in the next couple of weeks and the birds are kind of off the nest, we'll go ahead and grab that egg and test it to see if it was ever fertilized, and two, if it does have contaminants. So we would send that over to the University of Montana biogeochemistry lab right on our campus to test for metals and metalloids. And that'll give us a little bit better idea of maybe why that one egg didn't hatch.
Well, that's awesome. I think everybody will be interested to know if anything comes of that for sure. And we're so thankful that one egg did hatch. Let's take a look at Wensi here at just 2 weeks old to see how fast these ospreys actually grow. You can already see how much bigger it is than when we just saw it at hatching. The pin feathers are starting to emerge from their sheaths. We'll get to see the chick sort of bumbling around the nest a little bit too. It's a little dinosaur stage. So Wensi, Wensi at this point is 2 weeks old, hasn't even really entered its fastest part of the growing stage yet, right, Eric?
Oh, well, no, yeah, it's on that growth curve. There's a very hot, very fast
Yeah.
growth. It's already sort of been through that. So Wensi may gain a little bit more weight, but is probably on that where the curve is flattening out. It's hard to tell. I'm not sure, but I'm leaning towards Wensi being a female. Um, and females are larger than males as well. So it can be hard to tell chicks. The females tend to have these necklaces of spots on their breast feathers, and males tend to have more white breast feathers. But you can have males with dots and females with very few. What we do is when Rob and the crews, when we grab chicks and band them, we take small blood samples. And with those blood samples, we can determine if they're male and female for sure. So all the chicks that are banded, we can figure out for sure if it's male or female.
Very cool. So we know that they go through this rapid growth phase, and of course, to grow, you have to eat, right? And a lot of people wrote in questions about the fish that the osprey are eating. Do we know what types of fish they're generally catching around Missoula? I know you mentioned a little bit about some of the suckers they were bringing in earlier. And then, in addition to that, where are they hunting? Are they hunting all along the Clark Fork River? Or are they branching out into further ranges around Missoula? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, those are great questions. Uh, they Ospreys, most of the fishing is done by the male, as we've seen. So Iris has been mainly on the nest. She will take breaks, and early on, Clark would incubate and give her a little bit of a break. But she wouldn't come back generally with a fish. So the males do most of the fishing. They probably catch most of the fish within a mile or two of the nest. Um, but especially when conditions get really bad, so when there's flood conditions, the ospreys will tend to fly up into the mountains where there's mountain creeks that tend to be cleaner water, so they can, or high elevation lakes where they can actually see the fish. And in those cases, they'll fly 15, 20, 30 miles, surprisingly long distances to catch fish. Um, early in the season, most of the fish that were being brought in are mountain whitefish, which are they've got a mouth that's sort of downward pointing a little bit, and then a whole bunch of species of trout. So brown trout, brook trout, rainbow trout. So most of the species of fish they were bringing in are trout of various sorts, and those are cold water loving fish. And then later in the summer, like right now, the water's level is dropping. The water's getting pretty hot. The trout don't like this, so they hunker down. So the trout are mainly finding deep pools of cooler water and just hiding out in those. But these suckers that are bottom feeding fish, and they can get huge, ginormous, those are, as the water levels are dropping, those are becoming easier to see and catch by the ospreys since they are bottom feeding fish. So lately, it's been a combination of some trout and a lot of suckers.
Very cool. All right, so we mentioned we had quite the event happen during our talk here today. Wensi actually fledged the nest. We're going to try to cue that up for you now and watch it together. We're diverting from our regularly scheduled programming here to bring you some breaking news.
Oh my
Wow.
goodness.
So there he goes.
Wow.
Uh, so cool. It looked like it was going to happen this morning. The Wensi was flapping all over the place on top of the nest. So um, it's great to um, see the fledge happen in real time here. Let's talk about that a little bit now that we've reached that milestone altogether. Um, so what's going to happen now that once he's fledged? What can we expect to see on camera?
Yeah, so well, this is so exciting to see it all together live. That's amazing. Um, Wensi will stick around for perhaps another month in the area. There she is
Right
sitting
there, perched
next
right
door
there.
on the power pole. Yep, that's great. But she will stick around for a month. Iris may leave for migration fairly soon. So female ospreys, it's actually the breeding season is actually very hard on them. They can lose a lot of body mass. But I suspect with all the big fish that Clark has been bringing in, she might be in better shape this year than she has in previous years. But the females typically migrate first. They just one day they're gone. And she'll fly down to Central America or Mexico or wherever she goes and hang out all winter there. The males will stay for a month or so and continue to feed the chicks. So I suspect we will see Clark and Wensi occasionally on the nest. When Clark would catch a fish and bring it in, Wensi will probably fly back to the nest and he'll deliver it to her there. So we'll probably see more of her. She will start to try to fish. It's very difficult to catch fish, so there's a long, long learning curve. So she'll get subsidized by Wensi I mean, by Clark for probably at least a month. Yeah, there she is.
That's great to hear. So it sounds like we have at least a few more weeks where we might be able to see Wensi on camera,
Yep.
which is awesome. I want to be cognizant of the time here. We got about 8 minutes left. The Wensi fledge kind of took our attention away from some of the other topics we were going to talk about, but it's so cool to see live, so not worried about that. But I did want to give Eric and Megan and Sasha, you guys, a chance to talk a little bit about the broader scope of the Osprey research that's happening in Montana, how how the camera kind of fits in there, but also just what is the Montana Osprey Project telling us about the ospreys in the region? And then how is UMBEL also sort of housed within those themes? So, Eric, we can start with you if you want.
Okay, well, yeah, so the main research focus, again, and this is work spearheaded by Rob Dominich and the Raptor View Research Institute, is looking at the levels of toxins in the chicks. We're focusing on the chicks because if you think about it, all that biomass that is a chick, so all of that flesh and feathers and blood in Wensi was formed by fish caught within a mile or two of the Hellgate nest. So whatever contaminants are in Wensi, that's a very accurate representation of the very local pollution situation. So by having lots and lots of these sampling nests located all over Western Montana, Rob and his crew, we can come up with very high resolution maps of what we call the ecotoxicology, the crud in the river. And in a nutshell, this research shows that for the most part, the cleanup of the river has been going really pretty well. So the levels of most of the heavy metals of concern are very low in sort of what we consider a healthy stage. However, a number of years ago, arsenic, it had been going down, 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 and arsenic spiked. So high arsenic levels again. We're not quite sure. We've got some ideas, but still looking into that. And then mercury is a chronic problem, and it's a very, very bad toxin. And so there's active cleanup and research on the mercury issue. I'd say that's the biggest one right now. The other sorts of things that we're seeing with ospreys, we do have a fairly healthy population of ospreys right around Missoula, but our river, there's areas where osprey populations have crashed. Like 60% of the nests that used to be there when we started the study are gone. We suspect that's because of very low fish levels and climate change with the waters heating up and the rivers getting very low. And also there's been an increase in West Nile virus and avian flu. So we know that every year, the last few years, we've been having chicks die of wildlife viruses, viral diseases. So ospreys, that's kind of the research part of it, but ospreys are really telling us a lot about the health of these aquatic systems. So that's the research part of it. And I might pass it over now to Megan and let her talk a little bit about the sort of stuff that she's doing with UMBEL.
Yeah, so there's a lot we're learning from the critters that are in this river system, and I mostly work with songbirds. Like Sasha said, we kind of work with things under 100 grams, but I think what's really cool is that Iris and the other ospreys in this river have inspired much broader research into songbird ecotoxicology. So currently, we have 5 graduate students sort of digging into these questions around metal exposure in birds in nearby areas in the Superfund site that resulted from 100 years of hard rock mining. And most of our work is determining whether there's exposure, how that exposure is kind of getting taken up in the food web, and how that exposure might affect reproductive success of birds. So we've really taken the information from Osprey research and used it as a way to help, shed some light on what we're doing, how the songbird populations are doing. And then this year, Sasha, did you guys help with the nest occupancy study? So there's a nest occupancy study that is being led by Raptor View Research Institute. Were you guys monitoring some of those nests as well?
Yeah, we stopped in at I think we signed up for 3 nests that were between 2 of our field sites that we could stop in easily at. And I believe 2 of them were unoccupied this year, and we just followed along with one of them, which I think failed, unfortunately.
Mhm.
Um, it was maybe 10 minutes further east of Rock Creek, and that one didn't make it.
Maybe
Awesome.
too much mercury there.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing to hear about all of your work, and we're coming up in the last couple minutes here. I just wanted to, thank all of you again for spending the afternoon with us, for enjoying Wensi's Fledge all together with everybody online as well in the chat. It's clear we need to do this again so we can talk even more about, we didn't hit nearly all the topics we had hoped to hit today. So there's room for more of this in the future, and we hope that you'll spend more time with us as we talk ospreys. I just want to give a big thanks to everybody who joined us in this event for fun and interesting conversations about ospreys in Montana. Thanks again to our amazing panelists for sharing their insight into these amazing birds. Thanks to Wensi for fledging during the event. So cool. And just a reminder to people to hit the registration link if you want a full archive of the event today sent to you via email, and a chance to win the free course from Bird Academy today. So thanks again, everybody. Happy watching, happy birding. Can't wait to spend these next couple weeks watching Wensi grow at the nest. Appreciate you all for spending time with us today.